I am so grateful for each and every one of you, and I cannot believe that I'm about to have 1 million people across all of my platforms who enjoy my videos enough to follow me. But I need to be honest with you. My journey to becoming a mother was anything but easy, and my story is what drives me to help as many moms and dads as I can. On May 9th, 2019, after only trying for a month, my husband and I found out that we were expecting. We didn't expect to get pregnant so quickly, and we're in disbelief that it happened so easily. The first 2 months of pregnancy were pretty uneventful. I hardly experienced any morning sickness or any other major pregnancy symptoms. But over the next 2 months, that's when things started to really get out of hand. I remember experiencing this extreme pain that persisted each day at night. I consulted my OB about the pain, and while she hadn't seen anyone with my specific symptoms, she assured me that it was probably fine, and from what she could see in our ultrasounds, the baby looked great. I remember thinking in my head that this couldn't be normal, because if it was, no one in their right mind would want to have children, because this pain was so bad. As the pregnancy progressed, the pain became more frequent, but I felt like I had no other choice but to just trust my doctor and endure the pain. We had a gender reveal party with all of our friends and family, and we were so excited to find out that we were having a baby boy, so we named him Neil. On August 28th, 2019, my husband and I went to our son's 19-week anatomy scan, full of excitement and joy to see our baby boy. But I will never forget the words from the sonographer as she placed the probe onto my stomach and said, "Okay, I can tell right away something's not right with baby." My heart dropped to my stomach for what felt like an eternity, anticipating what she was going to tell us next. Then she said, "I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat." Our hearts were broken. Later that day, I was admitted to the hospital to be induced. At this point, I just felt numb. I think it was my mind's way of protecting me from what was really happening. Early the next morning, on August 29th at 6:10 a.m., I gave birth to our son, who was born sleeping. We got to spend time with him in the hospital and say our goodbyes, but none of it felt real to me, as I was still shocked and in disbelief. It really didn't hit me until we went home from the hospital with no baby. As time went on, it felt like we were constantly being reminded of his passing, especially with all of the physical reminders from my body healing. It hurt to see other pregnant friends having their babies. Even though I was so happy for them, I was sad for myself. I remember feeling completely broken and would cry out to God on my bedroom floor, asking him, "Why, God? Why me?" I remember getting so mad as I felt like my body betrayed me, and I just wanted answers to what happened. All of Neil's genetic miscarriage tests came back normal, and all the labs they took for me looked fine. It just didn't make any sense. We both knew we wanted to try again for another baby, but a huge part of us did not want to try again until we had answers. I remember searching every possible reason for a second trimester miscarriage. Most of the information I found was unhelpful, but I did come across some stories of women who had multiple miscarriages early on and later in pregnancy due to blood clotting disorders. I figured it was worth a shot to test for, so I brought it up to my new doctor and he ran some labs. Sure enough, I tested positive for 2 genetic blood clotting disorders. Even though it sucked getting this diagnosis, I was thankful I found out when I did, instead of potentially repeating what had happened. So with that news, we felt ready to try again. A few months of trying went by, and though it was only a short while, it felt like forever. Then on January 6, 2020, just days before Neil's due date, we found out we were expecting again. We both were excited, but also anxious at the same time. We went to the OB pretty shortly after I got a positive test, just to run some labs to make sure everything looked okay, and found out that my progesterone levels were looking pretty low. This can also lead to miscarriage, but luckily I was able to supplement with a progesterone pill for a few weeks until the placenta was able to take over around 12 weeks. For the blood clotting disorder, Daniel would give me a blood thinner shot every night before bed. At first, it was pretty painful because blood thinners can sting pretty bad, but after a while, I got used to them. Aside from this, and still experiencing a milder version of the pain that I had in the pregnancy with Neil, the rest of the first trimester went pretty smoothly. Then, as the second trimester hit, the world pretty much shut down because of COVID-19, and Daniel was no longer allowed to attend any of my appointments. When the time came to find out the gender, instead of doing a big gender reveal like we did with Neil, we opened an email and found out we were having a baby girl, and named her Nora Grace. I really wanted to be excited about this pregnancy, but in the back of my mind, I was still worried that I would lose her too. I felt a lot of anxiety leading up to Nora's anatomy scan, and it sucked that I had to go alone this time, given how our last anatomy scan went with Neil. Praise God, Nora looked great, and she was growing right on track. After her anatomy scan, I felt like I could breathe for the first time, and that's when I felt like it was actually going to happen. At 27 weeks, I went in for a routine gestational diabetes test, and to my surprise, I failed my glucose test. I was pretty bummed with my newest diagnosis and knew that the rest of the pregnancy was going to be even more difficult with yet another added complication. With all of my pregnancy complications, I was labeled as high risk, so along with my OB, I would also see a maternal fetal medicine doctor weekly just to monitor Nora's growth. In the first and second trimester, Nora Noah was measuring right at the 50th percentile, but unfortunately, as time went on, her growth was falling behind and her percentile kept dropping. Eventually, at the 37th week appointment, she was measuring under the 10th percentile, which labeled her as intrauterine growth restriction, or IUGR for short. We still don't know exactly why, but we think her growth was likely restricted from either the blood clotting disorders or the gestational diabetes. If left untreated, IUGR has the potential to lead to stillbirth. We explored the available options to keep her healthy, but really at this point of the pregnancy, the best option was to deliver her a little early. So at 37 weeks and 4 days, I was induced, and sweet Nora Grace was born on August 31st, 2020 at 4:39 p.m., weighing 5 pounds 11 ounces, just a year and 2 days after Neil's delivery. Because my journey to becoming a mom was such a roller coaster, I did very little research on what to expect after giving birth, since my main concern was just getting her here. When she arrived, I felt so unprepared and felt like I could barely keep my head above water when it came to actually being a mom and taking care of a newborn. I felt like I was playing catch up and constantly searching and asking questions and finding ways to make parenting just a little bit easier. Around 5 months after my daughter was born, I started sharing things I wish I knew as a first-time mom, and was so excited to see other first-time moms and dads, and even some veteran parents too, learn something new and helpful from my hacks. I feel so humbled not only to help moms and dads through my hack videos, but also honored to be able to share our story and say Neil's name for potentially millions to hear. It is almost impossible to completely describe the pain and loss we experience, and we deeply miss our son. We know that we will see him again in heaven, but desperately wish we could have gotten to know him before then. To be honest, the only reason we were able to make it through all of this was simply because of God. It's crazy to look back on this now and see how God was orchestrating our story this entire time. I know it's easier to say that now, but the reality is that it took many weeks and months for God to begin to bring us out of our crippling depression from our loss. For many weeks, it felt like taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back. It's actually impossible to pinpoint a specific moment as the turning point in the healing process, but rather this has been a slow, gradual process. It's still ongoing and likely will be while we're still here on earth. Despite the pain, we have been blessed with God's provisions on numerous occasions, with the most obvious one being our rainbow baby Nora. She's the biggest gift we have ever received, and we just constantly thank God for her. We have also been blessed from the church in physical, emotional, and spiritual ways that have gotten us through some of our darkest moments. It's hard to believe that it was only 3 years ago when we found out the worst news any expecting parent could ever receive to where we are now. Giving you a simple thank you can never fully express my gratitude for your support as I continue to share my motherhood journey through my parent hacks. It means more to me than you ever will know, and I'm truly grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you.